The prairie is quiet tonight. No coyotes, no wind in the grass, no creak of leather. Just snow, falling slow, soft, endless. Under a pale winter moon, a lone cowboy rides. His coat is stiff with ice. His breath hangs in the air. His horse moves carefully, each step testing the ground. Somewhere out there, thousands of head of cattle stand in the dark. Hungry, cold, waiting. The cowboy doesn't know it yet, but this ride will be remembered. Not for what he saves, but for what is about to be lost. By morning, the grass will be buried, the trails erased, the herds scattered, and the open range will begin to disappear. This is the night winter came for the West, and nothing was ever the same again. Howdy, Chip Schweiger here. Welcome to another edition of Way Out West, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the stories of the American West, brings you the very best cowboy wisdom, and celebrates the legacy of the American cowboy. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever been caught in a storm you just didn't see coming? Not just rain, not just cold. I mean, a storm that changes everything. One that turns confidence into fear, plans into mistakes, success into survival. Because in the late 1880s, that's exactly what happened on the Great Plains. Sudden blizzards, whiteout winds, temperatures that fell overnight. Cowboys trapped, cattle buried, ranches destroyed. And when the snow finally melted, the open range was gone forever. So today on the show, we're telling the true story of the Great Plains blizzards of the 1880s and how one brutal winter changed the American West forever. After the episode, check out the show notes at wayoutwestpod.com/blizzard. Hi there and welcome back. Before we talk about the storm, we need to talk about what came before it. Because in the 1870s and 1880s, the cattle business was booming. This was the age of the open range. No fences, no property lines you could see, no borders on the grass. Just millions of acres of prairie. Public land, and free grass. Texas ranchers drove longhorns north. Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas. Investors from New York, Boston, even England put their money into cattle. Why? Because it looked foolproof. Buy cheap cattle, let them graze for free, sell them high. No barns, no feedlots, no winter hay. Nature would take care of it, or so they thought. Huge cattle outfits appeared almost overnight. Some ran 50,000 head, some ran 100,000 head. And many of the owners never even saw their ranch. They were absentee investors. They trusted managers, they trusted foremen, and most of all, they trusted the weather. Here's the problem. The 1880s started out warm, really warm. Several mild winters in a row. Snow melted quickly, grass stayed available, cattle survived easily. So ranchers got confident, too confident. They stopped putting up hay, they stopped building shelters, and they stopped preparing for hard winters. Some even overstocked, put more cattle on the land than it could support. Because hey, it worked last year, and the year before, and the year before that. Sound familiar? Good times have a way of teaching bad habits. By 1886, the plains were crowded with cattle. The grass was thin, and nobody was worried. The winter of 1886 started early. In November, snowstorms hit Montana and Wyoming. Heavy snow, deep drifts, cattle couldn't reach grass. Some began to starve. Cowboys rode out in blizzards trying to move their herds. Some never made it back. Others barely survived. But many ranchers told themselves, this is temporary. It'll warm up. It always does. They'd been right before. They were wrong this time. January 1887. That's when everything collapsed. A warm spell hit first. Snow melted, ice formed, cattle grazed happily. Then, without warning, an Arctic front slammed south. Temperatures dropped 40 degrees in hours. Winds reached hurricane strength. Snow fell sideways. Visibility went to zero. This wasn't just cold, this was violent. Cowboys caught outside couldn't see their hands. Horses froze standing still. Men wrapped reins around their arms so that they wouldn't lose their mounts. Some were blown off their horses, some froze within sight of cabins. Others wandered in circles until they collapsed. Entire crews were trapped for days, inside bunkhouses, with no food, no fuel, no way out. Now imagine being a cow. No shelter, no barn, no feed. Just open prairie and wind and ice and snow piling higher by the hour. Cattle tried to walk into the wind. Instinct told them to. They walked until they couldn't anymore. Then they froze. Some drifted into ravines. Some piled against fences. Thousands died standing up. Others suffocated under snowdrifts. By spring, carcasses were everywhere. Rivers clogged, hillsides covered. Ranches that once held tens of thousands of head were empty. Some lost 70%, some lost 80%, some lost everything. You know what's easy to forget about this storm? We mostly remember it in the numbers. 70% lost, 80% gone, thousands dead. But behind every number was a human story. Because cowboys, ranchers, and settlers wrote about this winter. In letters, in journals, in newspapers. And what they left behind doesn't sound like statistics. It sounds like heartbreak. One rancher in Wyoming wrote, "We found cattle frozen in rows, as if they had simply laid down to sleep." Another said, "The prairie looked like it had been salted with death." A cowboy near Miles City, Montana, wrote to his family, "I have never known such cold. We burned fence posts to keep warm. We prayed the horses would live through the night." Think about that. Burning fences, not for warmth, for survival. Some families stayed inside for weeks. Snow piled against the doors. Food ran low. Fuel disappeared. People melted snow for water, boiled leather for soup, and waited, and hoped, and wondered if spring would ever come. One woman on a small homestead wrote, "We buried 2 calves today, and we buried hope with them." Now that's not exaggeration. That was life out there in 1887. No headlines, no reporters, just people trying not to freeze. And here's what's remarkable. Most of them didn't quit. They mourned, they regrouped, they rebuilt, they learned, they adapted. That's the part of the story we don't talk about enough. Yes, the storm destroyed, but it also forged something tougher. A new kind of Westerner. More careful, more disciplined, more humble. The kind who respected winter because they had seen what it could do. When spring finally came, the plains looked like a battlefield. Dead cattle everywhere, rotting hides, bleached bones. The smell lasted for months. Railroads stopped shipping beef. Banks stopped lending, and investors panicked. British capital fled. The cattle boom collapsed overnight. And suddenly, people started asking hard questions. Was the open range sustainable? Was free grass really free? Could you run livestock without preparation? The answer was now obvious. No. After the Great Blizzard, everything changed. ranchers adapted or they disappeared. Fences went up, barbed wire spread everywhere. Hay was stored, windbreaks built, shelters constructed. Herd sizes shrank, breeding improved, and range management began. Science entered ranching, and the romantic era of unlimited freedom was over. Modern ranching era had begun, not because of government policy, not because of politics, but because of weather. Because nature reminded everyone who was in charge. Now let's talk about what this teaches us, because this story isn't just about snow. It's about human nature. First lesson, never confuse luck with skill. Ranchers thought they were smart, but they were just lucky until they weren't. Second lesson, prepare for bad times during good times. The ones who survived had hay, had shelters, had backup plans. The third lesson, respect the land. You don't dominate it, you work it. Ignore it, and it will humble you. Fast. The fourth lesson, growth without discipline is dangerous. Overstocking, overconfidence, speculation. It all caught up with them. Sounds familiar in business, doesn't it? Today, we have forecasts, satellites, radars, feedlots, insurance, tractors, and technology. But the principle is the same. Markets crash, droughts come, costs spike, and customers disappear. And the people who survive are the ones who planned ahead, who didn't believe their own hype, who saved when times were good, who respected risk. That's cowboy wisdom, learned the hard way, in the snow, in the wind, in 1887. The Great Plains blizzards of the 1880s ended an era. They wiped out fortunes, they humbled investors, they changed ranching forever. But they also left us something valuable, a reminder that nature always has the final word, that preparation matters, that humility matters, and that real cowboys don't gamble everything on good weather. All right, before we close, we've got one more thing. Yep, that distinctive call from Buster the Bull means it's time for the Cowboy Glossary term of the week. And this week's term is open range. So the open range was land where cattle could graze freely without fences. No fixed boundaries, no private pastures, no containment. It defined early Western ranching, and it disappeared after the Great Blizzard. Because freedom without responsibility doesn't last long. Well, that's about all for this episode of Way Out West. I appreciate you spending part of your day with me and hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy the show, please consider sharing it with a friend who loves a good Western tale. That helps us reach more fans of the American West. And don't forget to drop us a review on your favorite podcast app and connect with us on Instagram and Facebook. Next time on Way Out West, we're riding into another forgotten chapter of Western history. We're talking about how cowboys handled sickness, injury, and death on the trail. No hospitals, no ambulances, no doctors for hundreds of miles. Just grit, improvisation, and sometimes miracles. You won't want to miss it. Until next week, this is Chip Schweiger, reminding you that the West wasn't built by luck. It was built by people who learned and then kept riding. Until next time, we'll see you down the road.